I was stirring oat milk into my morning coffee when it happened again. The soft buzz of my phone lit up the counter, screen cracked in the corner, the faded rose gold edges worn from years of use. Before I could grab it, a voice behind me chuckled. "Wow, Emily, that thing belongs in a museum." I turned, offering a polite smile to Jason from accounting. His phone, I noticed, was the latest model, still wearing the smug sheen of new plastic. He wasn't the first to laugh at my old phone, and he wouldn't be the last. I kept my fingers curled around it, thumb grazing the familiar scratch on the side, a scratch I'd stopped noticing years ago. I didn't say anything, because what could I say? "Actually, Jason, I own more than 4% of the company that made this phone." But that's not the kind of truth you just blurt out in the office kitchen. The coffee smelled rich, comforting, a sharp contrast to the icy flicker of memory pressing at the back of my mind. I stared out the tall window by the sink, the skyline catching the morning light. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message that made my stomach tighten. Just 3 words. "We need to talk." The words on the screen blurred for a second, pulling me back to a day I hadn't thought about in years. I was 19, sitting at a corner table in my mother's kitchen. The smell of burnt toast lingered in the air, and the steady tick of the wall clock seemed louder than it should have been. My phone, this very same phone, lay on the table between us, its box just torn open. "It's cute," my mother had said, hesitating over the word cute, as if she meant cheap. I could feel my cheeks heating. "It works fine, Mom. It's all I need." She took a sip of her coffee, eyes drifting toward my older brother, Mark, who was leaning against the counter, grinning in that way only older brothers can. "Emily, you know people are going to think you're behind." Mark laughed. "Yeah, sis, you'll be lucky if this thing can run a calculator app." It stung. I wrapped my fingers around the phone protectively, the way a kid might clutch a beloved toy. What they didn't know was that it had been a gift from Grandma Joyce, the one person who never made me feel small. "Don't you ever let them tell you what's worth having," Grandma had whispered when she handed me the box that morning. Her hands had been soft, warm, scented faintly of lavender. Sometimes the things people laugh at are the very things that will set you free. At the time, I didn't understand. The argument had grown louder, circling back to the same point. They thought I should take a loan, buy something respectable, keep up appearances. I refused, the lump in my throat threatening to choke me. When I left that kitchen, I didn't just walk away from breakfast. I walked away from their expectations, their judgment, their idea of who I should be. That phone stayed with me, not because I couldn't buy another, but because it reminded me of the moment I decided to live life on my own terms. After that day in my mother's kitchen, I moved into a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. The rent was low, the walls were thin, and the smell of detergent seeped into everything I owned. But it was mine. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at a coffee shop, evenings as a receptionist for a small real estate firm. Every dollar mattered. Still, I carved out a sliver of my paycheck, sometimes as little as $20, and put it into a beginner's investment app I'd found. At first, it was just curiosity. I didn't know the difference between a stock split and a stock option. But one night, during a lull at the reception desk, I read an article about my phone's manufacturer. Their shares were low, investors wary. Something about the article made me pause. The company wasn't flashy anymore, but they were steady, disciplined, still quietly innovating under the radar. It reminded me of me. That night, I bought my first 2 shares. It felt like nothing, like buying a cup of coffee that wouldn't arrive for years. Weeks turned into months. I learned to read financial reports on my lunch breaks, watched tutorials late into the night, and joined an online community where people discussed market trends. There was one woman, Linda, who became my unofficial mentor. She'd been investing for over 20 years, and she treated me with a respect I hadn't known outside Grandma Joyce. "Emily," she once told me over a video call, "patience is your secret weapon. Let them laugh while you're planting seeds." The laughter came plenty. Mark once spotted me at a diner, still using the same phone. He smirked, shaking his head. "You're the only 20-something in America still rocking that antique." I smiled and let him think whatever he wanted. Meanwhile, those 2 shares grew to 20, then 50, then hundreds. Dividends trickled in, tiny at first, then larger. I reinvested every cent. My portfolio expanded, but my phone stayed the same. It wasn't stubbornness, it was strategy. By 27, I quietly passed the six-figure mark. I still lived simply, still took the subway, still carried that antique in my purse. My apartment was nicer now, with big windows and hardwood floors, but I never broadcasted the change. Even my coworkers had no idea. I dressed neatly, but modestly, blending in. People assume you're ordinary when you don't flaunt anything. And I liked it that way. The truth was, I didn't need validation anymore. I was playing a long game, and I was winning. And then that message came this morning. We need to talk. It was from Mark. Mark's text was followed by a location pin, a new rooftop bar downtown. Sleek, glass walls, panoramic city views. The kind of place that charged you $20 for a drink and called it artisanal. When I arrived, Mark was already there, leaning against the railing with a whiskey in hand. He looked nervous. That was new. "Emily," he greeted, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Glad you came." We made small talk, the skyline glowing behind him, the low hum of conversation mingling with soft jazz. Then he cleared his throat. "So, things haven't been great," he admitted. "The startup folded. Investors pulled out. I'm in a bit of a hole." There it was. And, he added hesitantly, "I was thinking maybe you could help. You've always been good with money." I raised an eyebrow. "Good with money?" "Mark, the last time we spoke, you told me I was too cheap to upgrade my phone." He chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, well, about that." As if on cue, his friend Jason from accounting walked over, the same Jason who'd mocked my phone that morning. He glanced at it now, still in my hand, and smirked. "You really holding on to that thing, Em?" I smiled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. The glass walls reflected the city lights, and I caught my own calm expression in the pain, the picture of composure. "Do you know why I've kept this phone?" I asked, my voice light, conversational. Jason shrugged. "Sentimental value?" Mark frowned. "Because you're stubborn?" "No," I said, placing the phone gently on the table between us. "Because I own shares in the company that makes it. Quite a lot of shares, actually." They laughed at first, short, disbelieving chuckles. Then I added, enough that when the last quarterly dividend came in, it covered 6 months of my mortgage. Jason's smile faltered. Mark's brow furrowed. And when the stock price tripled over the last 5 years, I leaned back, crossing my legs. Let's just say it did more for me than any flashy new phone could. Silence settled over the table. I watched it sink in. The disbelief, the math spinning in their heads, the dawning realization that the person they'd been teasing had been quietly outpacing them for years. Mark cleared his throat. "Wait, so you're wealthy?" I tilted my head. "Comfortable. And smart enough to keep it that way." Jason muttered something under his breath and excused himself. Mark stayed, his eyes darting between me and the phone as though it had transformed into solid gold. "You never said anything," he murmured. I took a sip of my drink, savoring the tart bite of lemon. "I didn't need to." Mark leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice softer now. "Emily, I'm sorry. For, all the times I made fun of you. I didn't realize." I tilted my head. "Didn't realize what?" "That a woman can make smart financial decisions without broadcasting them." He winced. "Yeah, that." For a moment, I let the silence stretch, the hum of the bar filling the space between us. I wanted him to feel the weight of it, not out of cruelty, but because I knew he'd never learn otherwise. "You're asking me for help," I said. "That's fine. But it comes with conditions." His eyebrows shot up. "Conditions?" "Yes. If I help you, you're going to stop living for appearances. No more chasing the next shiny thing just to prove you can. And no more mocking people for what they don't have, or what you think they don't have." Mark sat back, processing. "That's fair." And I added, "You're going to start learning. Real learning. You'll open an investment account. I'll match your first contribution, and you'll treat it like oxygen. Non-negotiable." He hesitated. That sounds like work. It is work, I said firmly. But so is digging yourself out of debt without a clue what you're doing. A faint smile tugged at his lips, like he was starting to get it. There's one more thing, I said. You're going to apologize, to me and to anyone you've judged based on something as meaningless as their phone or their shoes or their car. You don't have to grovel, but you do have to mean it. Mark sighed, leaning back in his chair. You've changed. I shook my head. No. I've just stopped needing your approval. He stared at me for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. All right. I'll do it. I picked up my phone, the familiar weight comforting in my hand. Good. Because this isn't just about money, Mark. It's about respect. And that's worth more than any stock I own. 2 weeks later, I found myself back in my apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, sunlight spilling through the big windows. My coffee steamed gently on the counter, and my old phone rested next to it, screen lighting up with a new notification. It was from Mark. A photo. In it, he was standing in front of a small local library, holding a donation receipt. The caption read, "Starting with learning. You were right." I smiled, not because of the money, but because of the look on his face in that picture. Humble, open, the way he hadn't been in years. Over the next few months, small changes trickled in. Mark stopped showing off new gadgets he couldn't afford. He started talking about compound interest and index funds. Even Jason from accounting gave me a respectful nod in the break room, though he still carried the latest phone like it was a trophy. I didn't need their validation, but I appreciated the shift. That evening, I pulled open my dresser drawer and took out a small lavender-scented scarf, Grandma Joyce's. I wrapped it around my neck and looked at my reflection. Her words came back to me. Sometimes the things people laugh at are the very things that will set you free. I reached for my phone, running my fingers over the familiar scratch on the side. This device had been with me through years of doubt, discipline, and quiet triumph. It wasn't just a phone. It was proof that patience, resilience, and self-respect could outlast trends. I set it down on the counter, poured myself another cup of coffee, and stepped out onto my balcony. The city lights twinkled below, each one a tiny spark in the night, reminding me how far I'd come. And I thought with a smile that if they laughed again tomorrow, well, they still wouldn't know the half of it.